Welcome to the deep dive. We dig into the material you're interested in and really pull out the core insights.
Trying to find what really matters.
Exactly. And today, the source you picked is Stephen Mitchell's version of the Tao Te Ching.
That's right, a New English version, a real classic.
It definitely is. Attributed to Lao Tzu, who might have been around, the same time as Confucius.
Roughly, yeah. Though the history is pretty hazy.
True. But the text itself, it's known for being so clear yet deep. Lots of wisdom, even some humor, and real heart.
And that haziness around Lao Tzu himself is kind of interesting, isn't it?
How so?
Well, even his name, the old master, or maybe the old boy, is uncertain.
Right.
And there's debate if he was even a single historical person. It almost feels like the focus is meant to be squarely on the text, not the author's life story.
That makes sense. So for this deep dive, our mission is really to explore those core ideas in the Tao Te Ching, the ones that might offer some, let's say, practical guidance, ways to navigate life with a bit more understanding, maybe more ease.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Let's start right at the beginning. Chapter 1, this whole concept of the unnameable Tao.
Ah, yes. Foundational.
Okay, so what's the core idea here?
Well, it hits you right away, the very first lines. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao.
The name that can be named is not the eternal name.
Exactly. It's saying that the ultimate reality, the Tao,
Yeah.
it's beyond our words, beyond concepts. We can't just pin it down with a label.
So language has limits here.
Big limits. And then it says that naming is how we get all the particular things, right? The 10,000 things, as other translations put it, the world we see.
Okay, and this is the part I find really fascinating. It connects this to desire.
Go on.
Mitchell's version says something like, being free from desire lets you realize the mystery.
Yes.
But being caught in desire means you only see the manifestations, the named things.
Right. It suggests our own wanting, our own attachments kind of filter our perception. They keep us focused on the surface.
Makes you think, doesn't it? How much do we miss because we're focused on what we want?
A lot, potentially.
Yeah.
And the chapter ties these together, the mystery and the manifestations. They come from the same source.
Which it calls darkness within darkness.
Yeah. But not darkness in a bad way. More like profound depth. The source of all potential before anything takes shape.
Okay.
And that's the gateway to all understanding, accessing that deeper level beyond the names and desires.
Interesting. Okay, let's shift to chapter 2 then. This talks about the interdependence of opposites.
Right. Another core Taoist idea.
It says things like, when people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly.
When people see some things as good, other things become bad.
It's all relative then. These concepts define each other.
Exactly. You can't have up without down, long without short. They co-create each other. Being and non-being create each other.
So understanding this, how does that change things? How does the master operate knowing this?
Well, the text says the master acts without doing, teaches without saying.
Okay, acts without doing. That sounds like a contradiction.
It does, but it leads into that idea of wei wu wei. We'll probably get more into that. But here, it means allowing things to happen naturally.
Letting things arise and fade.
Having things, but not clinging to them. Acting, but without expecting a reward or specific result. It's a very detached yet engaged way of being.
And the payoff for this approach.
The chapter ends beautifully. When her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever.
Wow. So detaching from the outcome, from the need for credit, actually gives the work enduring value.
That's the idea. The ego isn't tangled up in it, so the quality remains pure. It avoids the trap of seeking recognition, which can undermine the work itself.
Which leads us nicely into that term you mentioned, wei wu wei, non-action.
Yes. And it's so often misunderstood.
People think it just means being passive, lazy almost.
Right, just sitting back and doing nothing. But Mitchell's version and the commentary around it clarifies it's not that simple. It's more like effortless action.
Effortless action.
Think about action that comes from deep body awareness. A trust in the flow of things, the intelligence of the universe, as Mitchell puts it.
He uses the analogy of an athlete, right, or a dancer.
Exactly. Someone so skilled, so attuned, that their movements seem completely natural, spontaneous, effortless. The doer disappears into the doing.
So it's not inaction, it's action without internal friction, without that sense of striving or forcing.
Precisely. It's being in harmony with the situation. And this ties directly into the value of softness.
Okay, softness, again, sounds like weakness, maybe.
But it's not presented that way at all. It's the opposite of rigidity. It's about being supple, adaptable, resilient even.
Like water finding its way around obstacles.
Or like those Tai Chi or Aikido masters Mitchell mentions. Their power comes from yielding, blending, redirecting energy, not meeting force with brute force.
So softness is a kind of strength. Adaptability is strength.
A very effective kind. It's about being in perfect harmony with the way things are, not by trying to conquer nature or situations.
So by becoming one with them.
Yes, by letting go of rigid concepts, judgments, desires, surrendering that need to control everything.
And this leads, maybe surprisingly, to compassion.
It seems to. When you drop the struggle, the separation, a natural sense of connection and empathy arises.
Okay, this harmony idea. How does it apply to, say, governing or leadership? Chapters 3 and 17 touch on this.
They do, and in a very counterintuitive way.
Chapter 3 says, overesteeming great people makes others feel powerless, and valuing possessions too much leads to theft.
Yeah, it points to the unintended consequences of societal values. Focusing too much on heroes or wealth might actually create the problems we're trying to avoid.
So what's the alternative? How does the master lead?
The text suggests emptying minds and filling cores, weakening ambition, toughening resolve. It sounds a bit strange to modern ears.
It does. What does emptying minds even mean here? Not making people ignorant.
Probably not ignorant, maybe more like freeing them from rigid ideologies or excessive desires. And filling cores sounds like strengthening their inner substance, their integrity.
So the goal is for people to feel they acted themselves, not that they were manipulated or forced.
Exactly. Leading in such a way that people say, we did it ourselves.
And Chapter 17 really expands on these leadership styles.
Right. It ranks them. The best leader. People barely know they exist.
Invisible leadership. The next best is loved.
Then feared. And the worst is despised.
It really emphasizes trust, doesn't it? If you don't trust the people, you'll resort to fear or manipulation.
And the text suggests that lack of trust is a sign of poor leadership. Real leadership fosters trust and allows people's innate goodness or capability to emerge.
Makes you think about current leadership models.
Definitely gives you a different lens to look through.
Okay, let's circle back to the Tao itself. Chapters 4 and 6 describe it as this source, this potential.
Yes, trying to point towards its nature again. Chapter 4 uses that image of a well.
An empty vessel, used but never used up.
Like an eternal void, but one filled with infinite possibilities. Always there, but hidden. Older than God, even.
That's a mind-bending phrase. Older than God.
It points to something utterly fundamental, predating any concept of a personified creator, the ultimate source.
And Chapter 6 uses the metaphor of the Great Mother.
A beautiful image,
And empty.
yet inexhaustible, giving birth to countless worlds.
And always present within us.
Yes, emphasizing its accessibility. It's not some distant thing, it's the very source of our own being, always available.
Like the quiet stillness beneath all the noise.
That's a good way to put it. Which actually leads us into chapters 12 and 16, focusing on inner vision and letting go.
Chapter 12 warns about external stimuli. Right. Colors blinding the eye, sounds deafening the ear.
Flavors dulling the taste. Even thoughts and desires can overwhelm us. Too much input can weaken our perception, paradoxically.
So the senses, while useful, can also be distractions, pulling us outward.
They can be, if we're constantly chasing stimulation. The text contrasts this with the master, who relies on inner vision, not just the external senses.
Looking within, seeing with the belly rather than just the eye in some translations.
Yes. Allowing things to come and go. Observing with an open heart, rather than being constantly pulled around by external events or internal cravings.
And Chapter 16 offers a practice for this.
It does. Empty your mind of all thoughts. Let your heart be at peace.
Easier said than done.
Of course. But it's presented as a path. By cultivating that inner stillness, you can watch things arise and return to the source.
This idea of returning to the source seems important.
Very. Observing this natural cycle is said to lead to serenity. Understanding the process brings tolerance. Tolerance brings kindness. It all flows from that peaceful observation.
It suggests these qualities aren't things you force, but things that emerge from a certain state of being.
Exactly, from understanding the way things are.
Now, Chapter 22. This is where we get those really punchy paradoxes.
Ah, yes. Yield and overcome. Bend and be straight. Empty and be full.
Wear out and be new. Have little and gain. Have much and be confused. My translation uses slightly different words, but the same idea. Become whole by being partial.
Straight by being crooked. Reborn by dying.
Receive everything by giving everything up. It really messes with logical thinking.
It's meant to. It shakes up our ordinary assumptions about how the world works. It points to a deeper logic.
How does the master embody this? The chapter says they reside in the Tao as an example.
Right. Because the master doesn't display himself, people can see his light, doesn't need to prove anything, so people trust his word.
And because he doesn't know who he is, in a fixed ego sense, others can recognize themselves.
It's very subtle. By not projecting a strong, defined self, the master becomes like a mirror, allowing others to see their own potential reflected. It's influence through non-assertion.
Again, that idea of achieving without striving. Because he has no goal in mind, everything he does succeeds.
It's perhaps the ultimate paradox. Letting go of the goal is the way to achieve it.
Okay, as we get near the end of our discussion points, Chapter 67 offers something maybe more direct. The 3 treasures.
Yes. Simplicity, patience, compassion, presented as the master's greatest treasures.
They sound simple, almost underwhelming compared to the paradoxes.
But their implications are profound. Simplicity in actions and thoughts is said to lead you back to the source of being, cutting through complexity.
Okay. And patience.
Patience with friends, with enemies, with yourself aligns you with the way things are. It accepts the natural timing and unfolding.
Down on passion.
This one's really interesting. Compassion toward yourself is presented as the key to reconciling yourself to all beings in the world.
So self-compassion isn't selfish, it's the foundation for universal compassion.
That's the radical idea here. You can't truly be compassionate towards others if you're harsh and judgmental towards yourself. It starts within.
That's a powerful thought. Finally, let's touch on chapters 38 and 57 about true power and leadership again.
Chapter 38 contrasts the master, who doesn't seem powerful but holds true power, with the ordinary person constantly striving.
Right. The master does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. The ordinary person is always doing, yet much remains to be done.
It highlights the difference between apparent effort and actual effectiveness. True virtue or power doesn't need to announce itself or force things.
It just is. And chapter 57 brings us back to governing.
Yes. The more prohibitions you have, the less virtuous people will be.
The more weapons you have, the less secure people will be.
It's arguing for minimal interference, letting go of control, trusting that if the leader is centered in the Tao, the world will govern itself more effectively.
So less governing is better governing.
In this view, yes. Overmanaging, overregulating stifles the natural order and creates resistance. Simplicity and trust are key.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. From the unnameable nature of the Tao itself,
to how opposites really define each other.
the real meaning of wei wu wei, that effortless action,
The importance of inner stillness and letting go.
those fascinating paradoxes,
Simplicity, patience, compassion as treasures.
and those unconventional ideas about power and leadership.
It really feels like we've just scratched the surface of what's in Mitchell's version of the Tao Te Ching.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly dense.
Right.
Each chapter offers so much to chew on, and the interpretations can go deep. These are just some initial nuggets.
Definitely food for thought, and maybe that's a good place to leave it for our listeners today. Here's something to maybe reflect on from our deep dive. Thinking about that principle of acting without doing, that effortless action, where in your own life, maybe a current challenge or a goal you have, could you perhaps apply a little less effort, a bit less forcing, and trust the natural unfolding just a bit more?
A great question to ponder.
Something to carry with you. Thanks
Okay.
for joining us for this deep dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're taking a journey, really, to the edges of the universe.
All thanks to the James Webb Space Telescope, an amazing piece of kit.
Absolutely. We've got a whole load of information lined up, its mission, the incredible design, how it got built,
Yeah.
which was a journey in itself.
Oh, definitely. And some of the early results, which are just mind-blowing.
Right. So the plan for this deep dive is to really pull out what makes JWST so important.
Yeah, why it's such a game changer, what it's showing us, but, keep it clear. Avoid getting lost in the super technical stuff.
Exactly. Spark some curiosity, give everyone a solid handle on this thing.
Think of it like understanding the universe's biggest questions, but seen through Webb's eyes.
Okay, let's jump in. What actually makes JWST special? It's not just Hubble 2.0, is it?
Oh, not at all. I mean, first off, just the size. It's the biggest space telescope we've ever sent up.
And that size connects to its main job.
Directly. Its core mission is infrared astronomy. It's built to see light from about zero point 0.6 to 28.5 micrometers.
Which is orange light, all the way to mid-infrared.
Precisely.
And infrared.
Wow.
Why is that the focus? Why is that wavelength range so critical?
Well, that's where the magic happens, really. Infrared light can cut through cosmic dust clouds.
Ah, the stuff that blocks regular visible light.
Exactly. So we can see into star-forming regions, planetary nurseries, places hidden from Hubble.
Okay.
And maybe even more importantly, think about the early universe. It's expanding, right?
Right.
So the light from the very first stars and galaxies, emitted maybe as visible or UV light, has been traveling for billions of years.
And it gets stretched out by that expansion.
Yeah, stretched or redshifted into the infrared spectrum. So if you want to see the universe's baby pictures,
You need an infrared telescope.
you absolutely do. It's the only way to pick up those ancient signals.
Okay, that really clarifies the infrared mission. Now, that giant mirror everyone talks about, give us the spec.
It's huge. 6.5 meters, or about 21 feet, across.
Wow.
And it's not one solid piece like Hubble's. It's made of 18 hexagonal segments.
Hexagons, right. Why hexagons?
They fit together without gaps, creating one large reflective surface, and they're made of beryllium.
Beryllium. Why that?
It's incredibly lightweight, but also very strong and stable, crucially at super cold temperatures.
Which we'll get to, I'm sure.
Yeah, yes. And each segment is coated with a very, very thin layer of gold.
Gold. For bling.
Ha, not quite. Gold is extremely reflective for infrared light, maximizes the signal.
Got it. So 18 gold-coated beryllium hexagons, what's the total area?
Altogether, it's about 25 square meters of light collecting area.
Which is how much bigger than Hubble's?
About 6 times larger.
6 times. That's a massive difference. Does that just mean it sees 6 times sharper?
Not exactly sharper, interestingly. While the mirror diameter is 2.7 times Hubble's, the resolution is actually comparable.
How does that work? Bigger mirror, same sharpness.
It's because Webb is looking at longer wavelengths infrared. Hubble mainly sees visible light, shorter wavelengths. Think of light as waves. Longer infrared waves need a bigger net, the mirror, to resolve fine details compared to shorter visible light waves.
Ah, so the bigger mirror compensates for the longer wavelengths to give similar detail.
Pretty much, yeah. It's perfectly tuned for the infrared universe it's designed to see. More size means it can see much fainter things, though. 6 times fainter.
Fainter and further away.
Okay.
But infrared, you mentioned temperature. That's a big challenge, right? Heat.
Huge challenge. The telescope itself radiates heat, which is infrared light.
So its own heat could blind it.
Exactly. If the telescope isn't incredibly cold, its own infrared glow would just drown out the faint light from distant galaxies.
Like trying to stargaze next to a bonfire.
Perfect analogy. It needs to be below 50 Kelvin.
Which is minus 223 Celsius. Minus 370 Fahrenheit. Seriously cold.
Extremely cold.
So how on earth do you keep something that cold when it's out in space, near the sun?
With some seriously clever engineering, the main thing is the sun shield.
The giant kite-looking thing.
That's the one. It's enormous, about the size of a tennis court. And it has 5 layers.
5. Why 5?
Each layer reflects some heat, and the vacuum between the layers acts as insulation. It gets progressively colder from the sun-facing layer to the telescope side.
Wow. What are the layers made of?
It's a material called Captain E film. Super thin, like as thin as a human hair.
No way.
Yep. Coated with aluminum for reflectivity, and the outer 2 layers also have doped silicon for better heat radiation.
It's like the most advanced parasol ever built.
Pretty much. It blocks heat from the sun, but also from the Earth and the moon.
And its location helps with that too, doesn't it? It's not orbiting Earth like Hubble.
Correct. It's way out at the Sun-Earth L2 Lagrange point.
L2. It's about 1.5 million kilometers away.
Yeah, nearly 1 million miles,
Phew.
further away from the sun than Earth is.
And why L2s specifically?
It's a gravitationally stable point where the telescope can orbit the sun in sync with the Earth.
So the Earth and Sun are always roughly in the same direction?
Exactly. This means the sun shield can always face the sun, Earth, and moon, keeping the telescope optics consistently shaded and cold.
And it avoids Earth's shadow too, right? For stable temperature.
Right. It orbits around the L2 point in a halo orbit, ensuring it gets constant sunlight for power. But the sensitive side stays permanently cold and dark, essential for keeping those mirrors aligned.
Incredible engineering. Okay, so we have a giant, cold, segmented mirror. protected by a massive sun shield way out at L2. What about the science instruments? What's actually doing the analysis?
Right. The instruments are housed in the Integrated Science Instrument Module, or ISIM. It's the heart of the science operations.
And there are four main ones.
Four main ones, yes. First up is NICAM.
Near-infrared camera. Does what it says on the tin.
Mostly. It's the main camera, covering 0.6 to 5 micrometers. Takes those amazing images we see.
But it does more.
Crucially, yes. It also acts as the wavefront sensor.
Wavefront sensor, like checking the focus.
Precisely. It measures tiny imperfections in the alignment of those 18 mirror segments and tells the actuators how to correct them. It keeps the telescope's vision sharp.
The telescope's optometrist. Okay, what's next?
Then there's NIR-SPEC, near-infrared spectrograph.
Spectroscopy. Breaking light down into its components.
Exactly. Same wavelength range as NIRCam, 0.6 to 5 microns. Spectroscopy tells you about the chemistry, temperature, motion of objects.
The real physics of what's going on.
You got it. And NR-SPEC has this amazing capability called a microshutter array.
Microshutters. Tiny windows.
Sort of. It's like 250,000 tiny controllable shutters. They can open specific ones to let light through from hundreds of individual objects like distant galaxies all at the same time while blocking light from others.
So you can get spectra from hundreds of galaxies simultaneously.
Yeah, incredibly efficient for surveys.
That's wild. Okay, instrument 3. You mentioned mid-infrared earlier.
Right, that's MIRI, the mid-infrared instrument.
Covering longer wavelengths.
Okay. Yep, 5 to about 27 micrometers. It's both a camera and a spectrograph for this range.
And mid-infrared needs even colder temperatures.
Even colder. MIRI has its own active cooling system, basically a cryocooler, like a sophisticated refrigerator to get it down to just 6 Kelvin.
6 Kelvin. That's just above absolute zero. Minus 267 Celsius.
Minus 449 Fahrenheit. Yeah, incredibly cold. Necessary to see those longer, cooler infrared wavelengths without its own heat getting in the way.
Wow. Okay, one more instrument package.
Yes, FGS NIRS. Fine guidance sensor and near-infrared imager and slitless spectrograph. Bit of a mouthful.
SGS, fine guidance. That sounds like pointing control.
Exactly. The FGS is crucial infrastructure. It locks onto guide stars and makes super precise measurements to keep the telescope pointed rock steady during observations, like the ultimate image stabilization.
Essential for those long exposures of faint objects.
Absolutely. And NIRS.
That's the near-infrared imager and slitless spectrograph part. It's a science instrument itself, provided by Canada.
Ah, okay. So FGS guides. NIRS does science.
Correct. NIRS is imaging and a type of spectroscopy called slitless spectroscopy, again in the near-infrared, from 0.8 to 5 microns. It benefits from the stability the FGS provides.
It's just layers upon layers of incredible tech working together. What about the main body, the part that's not the telescope or instruments?
That's the spacecraft bus. Think of it as the chassis and engine room.
Okay.
It holds the computers, the communication systems, the solar panels and power distribution, propulsion for orbital adjustments, basically everything needed to support the telescope.
And that lives on the hot side.
Yes, on the sun-facing side of the sun shield. Operates around room temperature, roughly 300 Kelvin or 27 Celsius.
A bit warmer than MRI.
Just a bit. It provides the stable platform, points the telescope, and talks to Earth.
Now, unlike Hubble, Webb wasn't designed for astronauts to visit and fix, right? That seems like a big gamble, given the complexity. It is a major difference. L2 is just too far for current crewed missions, realistically. Servicing was deemed too complex and expensive to build in from the start.
So if something breaks?
That's a concern, yes. But they did include some features with an eye maybe towards future robotic servicing.
Oh, really? Like what?
Things like specific guidance markers for a robot to find, possibly refillable fuel tanks, some components designed for easier robotic removal or access.
Planning ahead just in case. Smart.
A bit of future-proofing, yeah.
And the software running this whole thing. What language does a $10 billion space telescope speak?
It's actually quite interesting. A lot of the scripts for commanding observations use a modified JavaScript.
JavaScript, like for websites.
Sort of. It's a specific version called Nombas Scripties. Allows flexibility for scientists to script sequences, but that runs on top of the core flight software.
Which is something more heavy duty.
Yes. The main flight software that directly controls hardware is written in C++ author. Robust, reliable, low-level control.
A mix of high-level flexibility and low-level control. Makes sense.
Exactly.
Thinking about all this complexity, building, it must have been, well, a saga. It wasn't exactly quick or cheap.
You could say that. The initial ideas go way back to the 90s. It was called the Next Generation Space Telescope then.
And GST.
Right.
Renamed in 2002?
Yeah, after James Webb. The early plans were, let's say, ambitious, maybe $1 billion budget, launch around 2007.
And the reality.
Final cost ended up close to $10 billion, and launch was December 2021.
Wow. 10 times the budget, 14 years late. What happened? What were the big hurdles?
I mean, it was pushing the boundaries of technology in so many areas. The segmented mirror, making it foldable, making it work at cryo temperatures, that was new territory.
And the sun shield. I heard that caused headaches.
Oh, yeah. Deploying and tensioning those 5 huge, thin membranes perfectly in testing, extremely difficult. There were issues, tears, snags. It took years to get right. Testing everything rigorously took a very long time.
It sounds like a truly massive project. Who was involved? Just NASA.
No, it was a huge international collaboration. NASA led it, but the European Space Agency, ESA, and the Canadian Space Agency, CSA, were major partners.
What did they contribute?
ESA provided the NR-spec instrument, parts of MRI, and critically, the Ariane 5 rocket for the launch.
Ah, the launch vehicle. And Canada.
CSA provided the fine guidance sensor, FGS, and the NIRI instrument.
So a real team effort.
Absolutely. Across 15 countries, over 250 different companies, universities, agencies involved. A global undertaking.
15 countries. That's impressive. But I remember hearing it nearly got canceled completely at one point because of the cost.
That's right. Back in 2011, the U.S. House of Representatives moved to pull the funding. Costs had ballooned,
How serious was it?
Pretty serious. About $3 billion had been spent. Maybe 75% of the hardware was already being built or tested. But there was a huge pushback.
From scientists.
From scientists, from the public, from supporters in Congress. They argued the scientific payoff would be immense. Eventually, the cancellation was reversed, but with a budget cap put in place.
Close call. Makes the eventual launch feel even more dramatic.
Definitely. And the launch and deployment.
That's something else.
Christmas Day 2021.
Yeah.
Must have been nerve-wracking.
For everyone involved, absolutely. The Ariane 5 launch from French Guiana was flawless, thankfully. A huge relief.
And then came the unfolding.
Yeah, the deployment sequence. About 2 weeks of incredibly complex, pre-programmed steps. Unfolding the solar panel, the antenna, then the sun shield. That was the big one.
The tennis court opening up.
Right.
Yeah.
Then unfolding the mirror wings, positioning the secondary mirror, all controlled from Baltimore.
Any one step goes wrong.
And potentially mission over. There was no going back. It was incredibly tense.
It all worked.
Perfectly. It was an engineering triumph.
And after it unfolded, it still wasn't ready, right? The mirrors needed aligning.
Correct. That took months, getting those 18 segments to act as one single perfect mirror surface.
How precise did they have to be?
The alignment needed to be accurate to within 50 nanometers. 50 nanometers. That's insanely small. Less than 1,000th of a human hair.
It is. They did it by focusing on a specific star, HD 84406, taking thousands of images and sending tiny commands to actuators on the back of each segment to nudge them into place.
Just painstaking work.
An incredible feat of optics and control engineering.
So when did it finally start doing science? When did we get the goods?
Commissioning finished, and full science operations officially kicked off July 11th, 2022.
And the very next day, boom, the first images.
Yep. July 12th. That's when the world saw Webb's first deep field.
Oh, I remember that. The image of the galaxy cluster SMACS 0723, just thousands of galaxies, gravitational lensing, incredible detail.
It really showcased what Webb could do. And there were others released then, too.
Right, the Carina Nebula.
Stunning star-forming region.
Okay.
And the Southern Ring Nebula.
Like a cosmic eye.
Stephan's Quintet, the interacting galaxies. And data from an exoplanet, WASP 96b.
Showing water in its atmosphere.
Clear as day, plus amazing images of Jupiter, too. It hit the ground running.
And the performance. Was it meeting expectations?
Exceeding them, according to early reports. Better sensitivity, sharper images, even better tracking of moving targets like asteroids than required.
So more than just pretty pictures, it's already changing astronomy. Especially early universe stuff.
Absolutely. That's one of the most exciting areas. Webb started finding galaxies from the first few 100 million years after the Big Bang.
Really early on.
Yeah, the cosmic dawn. And some of these galaxies look surprisingly bright, surprisingly massive, maybe more mature than models predicted they should be at that stage.
Like J's GS Z14-0, the most distant one found so far.
That's the current record holder, yeah. Found May 2024. It and others, like Steers 93316, are challenging our ideas about how quickly the first galaxies formed and grew.
So the universe might have gotten started faster than we thought.
It's making scientists rethink things,
Yeah.
definitely. It's like finding, I don't know, a fully built skyscraper just weeks after laying the foundation. How did it happen so fast?
That's fascinating. A real paradigm shift, potentially. Any other early surprises?
Well, they've detected complex organic molecules in a galaxy 12 billion light years away.
Organic molecules that far back?
Wow.
Clues about the chemistry of the early universe.
Exactly. And Webb saw a merger of supermassive black holes just 740 million years after the Big Bang. Again, suggesting things might have happened faster, black holes grew bigger, quicker than we assumed.
It feels like every observation could rewrite a textbook chapter.
The demand for time on the telescope is huge for exactly that reason. Everyone wants to point Webb at their favorite cosmic mystery.
I bet. Now, I also heard about it getting hit by something. A micrometeoroid.
Yes, that happened in May 2022. A micrometeoroid, a tiny dust particle basically, hit one of the mirror segments, C3.
Did it cause much damage?
It was noticeable, the largest strike since launch.
Yeah.
But engineers were able to compensate by making small adjustments to that segment using the actuators.
So it didn't stop the science?
No, NASA confirmed all the instruments and modes were still working fine. It's just a reality of operating in space. There's debris out there, but the telescope was built robustly.
Good to know. So putting it all together, JWST isn't just more Hubble. It's fundamentally different.
Totally different. It's an infrared powerhouse, pushing into wavelengths and sensitivity realms we haven't had before.
That sun shield, the
Yeah.
cooling, the deployment, the mirror tech, it's all just staggering.
It really is. Every piece of it is a testament to what we can engineer when we aim high. Years of work by thousands of people.
And the early science is just, wow. Those images, but also the data that's already making us question our models of the universe.
Right. The fact it's challenging cosmology so early on shows its power. It's not just confirming things, it's finding things we didn't expect.
When you think about the light travel time, over 13 billion years for some of these objects.
You're literally looking back to the dawn of time, seeing the universe as it was just a few 100 million years after the Big Bang.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else is out there, hidden in the infrared? What are we going to learn about those first stars?
About how galaxies like our own Milky Way formed, about planets around other stars, maybe even signs of life.
The potential seems almost limitless. This deep dive, really, it feels like just scratching the surface of what JWST will uncover.
It really is just the beginning, a new era in astronomy. I definitely encourage everyone listening to check out the images online, follow the latest discoveries.
Absolutely. The universe is clearly full of wonders, and JWST is giving us an incredible new window to see them. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into the fascinating story of Quetzalcoatl. You know, the iconic feathered serpent deity from Aztec culture, but also way beyond just the Aztecs.
Absolutely. And for you, the learner, this deep dive, looking mainly at the Wikipedia article on Quetzalcoatl, is aiming to go beyond just a simple overview.
Right.
We want to really unpack who this figure was, explore his different roles, how he was visualized, and his lasting impact, all while keeping it engaging, hopefully insightful.
Okay, let's unpack the name first. Quetzalcoatl, it just sounds so evocative, doesn't it? We know it comes from Nahuatl and literally means precious serpent, or maybe Quetzal feathered serpent.
That's right. And what's particularly interesting is beyond that direct translation, there's evidence of a deeper layer, a symbolic understanding.
Oh?
Yeah. Back in the 17th century, you had Quetzalcoatl, who had connections to Aztec royalty. He suggested it also signified the wisest of men. So right from the get-go, you see this interesting duality, the grounded serpent form, but also connected to higher wisdom, value.
And this feathered serpent thing wasn't just the Aztecs, was it? I mean, the source material seems to point to it being all over Mesoamerica.
Oh, absolutely. The worship, or at least reverence, for a feathered serpent deity was really widespread across various Mesoamerican groups. And the iconography, the constant serpent motifs in their art, it points to a deep, long-standing tradition.
This is where it gets really fascinating, I think. The earliest hints take us way, way back. Like 900 BC.
Yeah, around then. At the Olmec site of La Venta.
Stela 19. It shows a serpent rising up behind someone, maybe in a ritual.
That's the one. Now, it might not be the fully formed Quetzalcoatl we see later on,
Right.
but it definitely suggests this symbol, feathered snakes, had really deep roots in the region.
So what does that tell us? That kind of longevity?
Well, it establishes this remarkable continuity, doesn't it? From that early formative period right through the classic and post-classic eras.
And then Teotihuacan comes along.
Exactly. Then you see the Teotihuacan culture really embrace the feathered serpent. It becomes a central religious symbol, but also political.
The Temple of Quetzalcoatl there is pretty famous, right? In the Ciudadela complex.
Prime example, yeah. It almost seems like they really solidified the iconography in a big way.
And the way he looked, that changed over time too, didn't it? Like at first it was just an animal.
Yep. Initially, the depictions were fully zoomorphic, basically just a snake with feathers.
But later,
But as we move into, say, the classic Maya period and beyond, the deity starts picking up human characteristics.
like a...
You see examples like in the Borgia Codex, where Quetzalcoatl is sometimes shown with a beard. It's this really fascinating blend, Animal power, human-like features.
The Maya also had their own take on the serpent, right? Seeing it as the sky.
Embodiment of the sky. And the vision serpent, that was important too. Kind of a shamanic helper figure.
That sky connection seems pretty key.
It is. I mean, think about it. The serpent shedding its skin often symbolized renewal cycles.
Oh, like celestial cycles.
Exactly. It aligns naturally with the movements of stars, planets. And the vision serpent part, well, that highlights its role in accessing altered states, the spiritual realm.
So after Teotihuacan sort of faded around 600 AD, did the feathered serpent idea spread out more?
It seems like its influence really expanded then, yeah. Spreading to places like Xochicalco, Cacaxtla, and Cholula.
And Cholula became a really big deal for Quetzalcoatl worship.
Became the heartland, pretty much, especially for the Aztec or Nahua understanding of him, Quetzalcoatl, as they called him.
Right.
But it's crucial to remember other cultures had their own versions. The Maya had Kukulkan, Gukumats. The Mixtec had Yuhutachi. Even way down south with the Inca, you see parallels with Viracocha.
Wow. So it suggests this underlying concept that just sort of adapted locally.
Precisely. A shared religious idea taking on local flavors.
So, okay, Quetzalcoatl wasn't just one thing. The sources paint him as having a huge range of attributes, different forms.
Definitely not one
A
dimension.
god of life, light, wisdom, lord of the day, the winds, ruler of the west. That's quite a portfolio.
It is. He's really multifaceted. He's considered one of the Tezcatlipoca, often the white Tezcatlipoca specifically.
White Tezcatlipoca.
Yeah, which often connect them to things like creation, purity, benevolence, kind of a contrast to some other aspects of that powerful deity complex.
And he's shown in two main ways, right? The feathered serpent itself.
And Ehecatl, the god of wind. Those are the two big ones.
And loads of other names, too. White Tezcatlipoca, like you said, Tezcatl-Topiltzin, Quetzalcoatl, Precious Twin, Huahui's Calpantecutli.
It's like each name highlights a different facet of him,
So that makes sense. And the wind connection, Hecatl, that seems really important.
Hugely significant. As Ehecatl, he's the guide, the road sweeper for the rain gods.
Road sweep.
Yeah, clearing the path for the rains. But also just a powerful force of nature in his own right.
And that chest plate he wears, the spiral shell thing.
Ah, the Aguchutzcatl, the wind jewel made of conch shell. It's thought to symbolize those swirling patterns you see in nature, hurricanes, dust devils, even seashells, whirlpools.
Wow.
It was a potent symbol. Religious leaders often wore it maybe to embody that connection to the wind, that vital force.
The animals linked to him are pretty cool, too. Quetzals, obviously, rattlesnakes, crows, macaws.
For Quetzalcoatl himself.
And then as a Hecatl, it's spider monkeys, ducks, the wind itself.
Yeah, and even as the morning star Venus, he's linked to the harpy eagle.
These seem like very specific choices.
They likely are, yeah.
Yep.
Reflecting different characteristics, different domains. The bright Quetzal feathers fit the precious part of his name.
Right.
The serpent connects to the earth, its power. The wind associations for Ehecatl are pretty direct.
And the strong link to Venus. Calpantecutli, Lord of the Star of the Dawn.
That's the one. And his twin brother, Elitl, was the evening star.
A twin brother. That sounds cosmologically important.
Oh, it is. This whole duality of Venus morning and evening star represented by twins. It reflects a really common Mesoamerican theme, complementary opposites, cycles in the cosmos. It speaks to a very holistic view.
He was also a huge figure for the Aztec priesthood, like their patron god.
Absolutely. Patron god, yes. And his influence just stretched everywhere. Wind, Venus, the sun, merchants, arts, crafts, knowledge, learning.
Wow.
He's even credited with inventing books and the calendar and
Wow.
giving maize, corn to humanity.
Incredible.
And sometimes even a symbol of death and resurrection. He really was central to how they understood the world.
He truly embodies so much cultural significance. Sustenance, the cosmos,
That's
intellect.
everything. Yeah, and that life and death association, it just underscores that cyclical view of existence that was so fundamental for them.
And being the patron of priests, the namesake for the high priests,
Yeah,
his religious authority must have been immense.
no question.
Okay, now this is interesting. The source mentions conflicting legends about human sacrifice. Some say he was against it, others show him practicing it. That's quite a clash. Does the Wikipedia article suggest why? Maybe different places or times had different ideas.
That's a really good question. And yeah, that ambiguity probably reflects regional variations in his worship, or maybe shifts in religious practices over time.
Right.
It's a good reminder that these ancient belief systems weren't monolithic,
Mhm.
not always uniform. Different groups might have emphasized different bits of his complex nature, leading to these different stories.
Let's dig into the myths about where he came from. Seems like there are a few different versions.
Yeah, several accounts.
One says a virgin, Chimmelman, conceived him after Omitidal appeared in a dream. Another says she swallowed an emerald.
That's another one.
Then there's a story where she's hit by an arrow from Mixcoatl.
Right.
And another where he's born from Kotlikyu, who already had 400 kids, the stars.
Those are some dramatic beginnings.
Seriously, what do these different birth stories tell us? Maybe different groups integrating him differently.
Exactly. I think these diverse stories highlight how multifaceted he was seen to be, and perhaps they represent different tribal or regional accounts that got synthesized later on.
Adapting to local traditions, but keeping the core idea.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That virgin birth motif is intriguing, of course, even if the method varies quite a bit.
Then there's the other origin story, placing him as one of the 4 sons of the primordial couple, Umetacutli and Omichawatl.
The 4 Tezcatlapocas.
Right, and he's linked to the West. Light, justice, mercy, wind. That ties back to the attributes we were just talking about.
It does. Being one of those primary creator deities really puts him at the foundation of the cosmos in Aztec belief. It reinforces his role as this fundamental force.
And then there's that really dramatic story, him going down into Mictlan, the underworld.
Oh yeah, the creation of the current fifth world humans.
He gets the bones of the previous races and uses his own blood to bring them to life.
It's an incredibly powerful creation myth. Really emphasizes his role as a kind of savior figure and that deep connection between gods and humans through, well, self-sacrifice.
But it wasn't all heroic, was it? There's that other legend. Tezcatlipoca tricking him.
Ah, yes. The story of him being coerced into drunkenness.
And getting involved with his celibate sister. Leading to terrible shame.
That's the one. And as a result, he orders a stone chest built, puts on his turquoise gear, lies down.
And sets himself on fire.
Yeah. His ashes become stars, and his heart becomes Venus, the morning star.
Wow. That's quite a narrative. Fall from grace, transformation. What impact would that have had on how they saw Venus?
It's a fascinating story, isn't it? Fallibility, repentance, and then the celestial transformation. It very likely symbolized the cycle of Venus itself, how it disappears from the sky.
And then reappears.
Exactly. Reappears as the morning star, mirroring his death and rebirth as a celestial body.
And on top of all that, he's the one who brought cacao, chocolate, to the Toltecs.
That's another credit to his name. Taught women how to make chocolate, according to legend.
So, creator god, wind god, Venus link, and the bringer of chocolate. His influence was just huge.
He truly embodies this vast spectrum of cultural significance, from the basics of life, like food and knowledge, right up to the cosmos and morality.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit to something really interesting and pretty debated. This idea of Cortés being seen as Quetzalcoatl.
Ah, yes, the Cortés connection.
The source mentions that long-held idea that Moctezuma II, the Aztec emperor, initially thought Cortés arriving in 1519 was Quetzalcoatl coming back.
Right, and this is a really complex issue that ethnohistorians have increasingly questioned over the years.
How so?
Well, the Wikipedia article correctly points out that the direct link Cortés equals Quetzalcoatl returning. It isn't really strongly supported by documents from before the Spanish showed up and started influencing things.
So where does the idea come from, mainly?
A lot of it comes from later Spanish sources, including Cortez's own letters, where, he often portrayed the Aztecs as kind of naive and just waiting for him.
Well, he would say that, wouldn't he?
Exactly. This narrative served a purpose for the Spanish. It helped legitimize their conquest, framing it as fulfilling prophecy, painting the Aztecs as expecting their god's return.
Right, makes sense. What about the Florentine Codex? Doesn't that have Moctezuma's speech sounding kind of reverent?
It does, yes. Compiled later by Sahagún. And some interpretations definitely read it as Moctezuma seeing a returning deity. But as the source highlights, the actual intent, the translation, it's heavily debated.
How so?
Well, someone like Matthew Restall argues that what looks like Moctezuma offering his throne might actually have been a form of diplomatic politeness within their own power structures, not literally saying, you're a god, take over.
Ah, so more like ritual language than literal belief.
Potentially, yes. We have to be really careful interpreting these accounts through a purely Western lens. The nuances of Nahuatl rhetoric, Aztec social customs, we're still figuring a lot of that out.
And the Franciscans played a role, too.
They did, yeah. They helped promote the idea, sometimes even linking Quetzalcoatl to Thomas the Apostle, trying to fit the anticipated return into a Christian framework.
So the current thinking among scholars is that this Quetzalcoatl-Cortez myth is probably something that developed after the conquest.
That's the prevailing view among most Mesoamericanists now, yes.
Yeah.
While Quetzalcoatl himself was massively important before the Spanish,
Sure.
the specific idea that Cortez was his return seems to have solidified afterwards.
Okay, but the source brings up another interesting angle. The Spanish allied with other groups, right? Eastern Nahuas, Mixtecs, Zapotecs,
Right.
enemies of the Aztecs.
That's right, a whole confederacy, really.
And their big religious center was Cholula, which was dedicated to Quetzalcoatl worship. So, could that Quetzalcoatl return legend have resonated with them? Maybe as a reason to side with the Spanish against the Aztecs.
That's a very insightful connection to make. That existing religious and political landscape with Cholula as this hub for Quetzalcoatl, it likely created fertile ground for alliances against the Aztecs, yeah.
So the legend might have been used strategically?
It might have been strategically used or reinterpreted by those groups when the Spanish arrived, giving a kind of powerful ideological backing to their resistance against the Aztec Empire.
Fascinating. Okay, finally, let's look at Quetzalcoatl today. In contemporary culture, it's amazing how he keeps popping up.
He really does have staying power.
The Latter-day Saints movement, for instance. Some early followers apparently believed Quetzalcoatl was Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that connection was made by some, though it's important to note it's not official church doctrine now, more considered folklore.
But it shows how people try to find links across different beliefs, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That archetype of the divine messenger, the savior figure, it resonates across cultures and times.
And then there's just media everywhere. Movies like Q, manga, anime like Yu-Gi-Oh!, or Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. Video games, too. Megami Tensei, Final Fantasy.
Even Star Trek.
Yeah.
And the Marvel movies recently. He's become surprisingly common. Why him, do you think? What makes him stick in popular culture?
Well, I think there are a few things. First, the visual itself, the feathered serpent, it's just inherently striking, isn't it? Powerful, ancient, mysterious.
True.
Plus his complex nature, god of wisdom, creation, wind, Venus. It offers such a rich source for storytelling. Creators can pick and choose different aspects of his mythos to fit whatever story they're telling.
And it's not just fiction either. There was that Tony Shiro book that inspired New Age folks to go to Chichen Itza.
Right.
Aeromexico has a plane with a Quetzalcoatl design, and the pterosaur. Quetzalcoatl is named after him.
That's a pretty significant legacy, stretching from ancient myth right up to modern science and travel. It just highlights how a figure from the deep past can keep inspiring people, finding new meanings today. So, to wrap things up for you, the learner, our deep dive shows Quetzalcoatl wasn't just a god. He was incredibly complex, central to Mesoamerican beliefs, embodying creation, wind, knowledge, so much more.
His image, how people understood him, it definitely evolved over time and across different cultures.
And that whole Cortez connection seems much more likely to be a story layered on after the conquest, rather than something the Aztecs widely believed beforehand.
Precisely. He really stands as this powerful testament to the richness, the depth of Mesoamerican cosmology, a figure whose influence, well, it continues to resonate in some pretty surprising ways.
And on that note, here's a final thought for you to chew on. Given this huge range of attributes, this long, twisting history of Quetzalcoatl, how might our ongoing fascination with this feathered serpent actually reflect something deep in us? Our human drive to understand nature, the cycles of life and death, the messy business of cultures meeting and changing.
Hmm. And maybe think about what other figures, historical or mythological, from totally different cultures, have similar layers, similar enduring influence, prompting us to ask those same kinds of big questions.